For this week's teardown, I have an engine that's been kind of tough to find. And it hasn't been tough to find because it's super reliable. It's been tough to find because many of the vehicles that these engines came in were needlessly crushed in the Dieselgate scandal. This is a Volkswagen 2-liter TDI out of a 2010 Volkswagen Jetta. And many of these cars are no longer in existence. They took perfectly nice cars and destroyed them because they were as dirty as the vehicles that they replaced. We're not going to get into the politics of that. We are going to tear down this blown up engine to figure out what happened, if it could have been prevented, and if I got anything I can sell off of it. There are many different versions of Volkswagen's 2-liter TDI engine. This is the CJAA. It was offered in the Golf, the Jetta, and the Beetle. It produces 140 horsepower, 236 foot-pounds of torque, which is, they drive great. I've driven several of these cars, especially when they're paired with a manual. They're great to drive, especially when you tune them. When you tune them, they drive really, really, really good. But you didn't hear that from me. You don't ever want to delete anything off of these engines. Unfortunately, with this particular core, I don't have a VIN on it. These engines don't have a VIN stamped anywhere, and I don't have any way to correlate this to a particular VIN from serial number like a lot of the engines I get in. And I don't know any details about this one, but I can tell you one thing about it. It has a very small but purposeful inspection port in the bottom of the block. So you know what they say about holes in the block? Whether it's little or big, it's still bad. And I can see some shiny stuff in there. So obviously we're going to have some malice in the combustion palace on this thing. Clearly, we must find out if this engine turns over. Because with a hole in the block, you would assume that it might not. But we need to know if this thing's going to fight us coming apart. Now I will say it had no flex plate or flywheel on it, which means it could have come from a manual transmission. You wouldn't need to turn it over. That's not a good sign, guys. I think it's locked up. What do you guys think? Let's try it the other way. I bet that's the problem. I think it's actually locked up, guys. Yeah, it's definitely locked up. I know, we're going to stop where we're at. I think the first thing we're going to do is start to try to get this harness off the engine. If we can. Big if. Wonder if the harness is any good. I don't see anything cut. That doesn't mean there's any value. This is what we need here. Looks like I've got some fuel lines to get out of the way before I can get the majority of this harness. Let's work on this fuel line here. Figure out how these come out. I remember these. It looks like one of the fuel lines is keeping that one in. So let's get the hard fuel lines off. Let's crack all these loose. Well, it's much easier with that out of the way. It's also possible that this engine got banged around a little bit where it was from, which would make getting some of the stuff apart, if it was bent, a little more daunting. Fuel lines are off. Now I have this fuel hose here. Let's get a few more things unbolted here. We're shedding parts. So it looks like I am going to need to get another rubber hose here. Oh, you little I know what you guys are saying. You're using the wrong pliers for that. You're right. These are not the correct tools for this, but you know what? It's what I got.
I also have these
that need sharpening. All right, so now looks like I'm going to need to get, I guess these are for the glow plugs, these connectors. They got to come out, right? I don't want to just yank on them. Of course, the one that doesn't need to come out right now, it comes right out. That beautiful clamp. There's two. Of course, you always want to leave the hardest ones for last. Don't know that that's how I'd want to work on your own car if you did this, but this is a core engine. It's a little different. At least it's not all tangled up. You know, this is nice and... You know. Yeah, that can go over there. And then we got this harness. Always worried about breaking these. And we got a little headway. We'll get the fuel injector hold downs removed. These come all the way out, or do I gotta?
What do I do here?
Help me.
These just pop out. Do I use blue? It seems like a scary idea. I'm going to take one of the fuel lines and thread it into the injector. See how they move. Do these ever get stuck? You guys laughing at me now? I don't really want to damage them. They could be good still. Oh, these are fine. I'm always nervous taking some of these injectors out because you never really know how much they're going to fight you. Like this one. This one is apparently stuck. So we got one loose. I'm going to put the lines on the other two. We're going to see what we can get out easily. It looks like I'm only getting lucky with one so far. That sounded wrong. Not what I meant. I don't think you can pry on these without breaking them. This one wants to just come right on out. Of course, that's the first one I tried. I don't know that I would advise prying off of the fuel pressure sensor. Probably not a great idea. Well, I was wrong about what this engine is. It turns out that this is the engine out of a Passat. This is the CKRA, and the only reason I found that out is that the way the injectors are held down on these engines are different than the CJAA. So this is out of what I assume is a 12 to 14 Passat. I went by date code stamped on the cylinder head to try to figure out what it was before, and it's from 2010, and there was no 2010 Passat TDI. So I thought it was the other one, and I made a mistake. But now that still leaves us with the challenge of getting the injectors out, which apparently the one that popped right out is an anomaly, and I'm supposed to use a slide hammer on these. Yay. Okay, so we're just going to try what hasn't worked already. I'm really surprised that this one just came up all willy-nilly. That one moves quite a bit. I bet I can get this one out. Look at that. Well, it's not terrible. Now, does this ruin these by doing this? Might ruin my hand. Okay, so the middle two, no problem. The outer two, problem. We are going to get these, I promise. The best way to do this. Oh, that one, does it move? Oh, yeah. That one will come right out, right? That's not too bad. Can I get this last one out that way? I feel like we're going to run into some troubles here. This one I could get out if it wasn't for this hold down. It's kind of an interesting design. It makes you work real hard for reasons I do not understand. I'm kind of up against the wall here. Oh yeah. My hand hammer, which you guys have told me not to do. I don't really do that often, so I don't know if it's going to be a huge deal later in life. I still shouldn't do it. This one's really... I got an idea. I would worry when I say I got an idea. I really would. It didn't work. I'll almost get this guy out. Oh, I got it to turn. I think we're in the home stretch now. Perfect. You think carbon hold that thing in? We're so close, but we're so far. I think that was a hit. Success! No slide hammer needed. Well, these injectors are not great. Lots of soot on that one, and that one is really bad. It looks like combustion gases were getting past it. I don't see any chunks of metal on the tips, so we'll see. I think they're probably just good as cores, if there are even any value there. Some of these European injectors have no value once they're bad. Next, we'll remove the fuel rail. And now we'll start zipping bolts out of the intake manifold. It looks like I need to remove this. Looks like an EGR pipe here. All right, is there anything else that holds this on? All right, there are two T30s on a support bracket. And then we have more things to do. Let's unbolt the dipstick tube. Oh, it broke. It loses already. I think we can deal with that later. Oh, we're ready for liftoff. Okay, so this should just intake is off. So the intake ports are kind of unique on this engine. There's definitely some debris in there. It's not terrible looking. Keep in mind this is a diesel, but there's some junk in there. That valve is currently open. Oh, yeah, there's some debris in here. Who knows if that's from how this engine was stored? Yeah, there's some like leaves and dirt. I don't think that's how this thing was running. And looking at the intake manifold, I mean, there's quite a bit of soot in there, but it's not as bad as some of the other engines we've seen. It looks like the gasket wasn't in the best shape. And this is not really a throttle body. This is for shutting the engine down. It's for starving it of air. Now it is time to unbolt the valve cover. Or is it called a cam cover? I think that's it. Skittle blue, carefully here. We don't want to do any damage. Not that I didn't pry on it already. So overall, this thing is really clean in here. I don't see any signs of anything wrong at all. I don't see forbidden glitter. There's not really any varnish to speak of either. No signs of water in here. There's some debris down there, but I'm not convinced that it was running like that. I'm just not. And this is a pretty cool design. So it only has one cam gear, but it is a dual overhead cam. And the intake cam is driven off the exhaust cam with this gear. Fewer moving parts. Now we're going to strip the timing side of the engine. We'll start with the motor mount bracket. I just had to have the hammer in my hand, that's all. And now the lower timing cover. So let's take a look at the timing belt and the timing system. It doesn't really look too terrible. It's a little wet in here, but I also don't know how this thing was stored. Yeah, it's definitely been leaking. I mean, this whole engine is just doused in grunge. But I don't see any cause for concern in here. It looks like maybe it's got a genuine branded water pump in it. It is a water pump, right? Yeah, it's a water pump. There's a weep hole. So now we're going to remove the fuel injection pump. We'll get the timing belt off. Start tearing this thing down. Well, I've decided to zip these bolts back in because I'd like to get that out, and I don't really think that I need to, but we're going to take that out anyway. And I probably could have done that either way, but we're going to take the whole thing apart. Let's get blue for this one. That'll work too. And the belt is off. It looks like it might be an original belt. I wonder what the maintenance interval. I'm sure some of you guys could tell me what the interval is supposed to be, how long these belts are supposed to last. I don't see a date code on it anywhere, but it's definitely a genuine branded belt, and it's definitely got some age on it. I'm not sure if that was the right procedure, but I did it. I'm just going to zip everything out. Nope. All right, looks like we got a pickup wheel. How does this come off? Like that. And some T30s for the inner timing cover. Oh, I got a triple square right there. Something is keeping this. Well, I can get the pump out. Let's get the pump out next. All right, we have a solution for that. Just give it a little brap. Or not. Doesn't take much. So it looks like someone's already pulled the metering valve out of the high pressure fuel pump, but I don't see any glitter in there. Really wish they had left that on there. Not that these have a ton of value, but it's a lot harder to sell without a metering valve. And it looks like the thing that's keeping this inner timing cover on is the water pump. Why would you make this go underneath part of the water pump? What is the purpose there? I don't understand. But I guess that's what we're going to take out next. Okay, let's unbolt this thing. How do you come out? There we go. Well, that wasn't too bad. It's just a weird design that this would capture the inner timing cover. I don't really understand the point of that. That looks pretty good. It says 4821, so this could be maybe a 2021 water pump, which would mean, if that's the case, it means that the timing belt was likely replaced at the same time, since you have to remove it. And I don't think anyone would do that. But man, this could be a relatively new water pump. I didn't even touch the box. Second time's a charm. All right, now can we get this inner timing cover? Look at that. Way easier. I'm going to take a minute and remove this accessory bracket. Pull this cam pickup sensor. Let's go over to the other side of the engine. Next, we'll unbolt the vacuum pump. Got some more cleanup on this side. And it's got a totally smashed thermostat housing. I think that's just for moving the engine around. I don't know that it was driving like that. Let's get this unbolted. That might not even be a thermostat. It might... No, that's just a water housing, but ugh. That's gross looking. Before we start on the head, I want to get the rest of this contraption off of here. We don't really have too much. This pipe, though. Did that help me? It doesn't appear to have helped me. It's this rubber hose that's a problem. I know, I should use the right tool. Oh, come on. Fine, I'll go get the right thing. All right, we're going to do this. We're going to get this off. It's going to come off. It's going to be fine. Oh, we're leaking coolants. Will you let... I think now it's just the dipstick tube. Can't believe this is holding me up. It's plastic. How is it doing this to me? Oh, you know what? It's because the block... Wait a minute, what's going on over here? There's all kinds of stuff I didn't see before. Let's get this harness out of here. I'm just going to carefully... So this was much worse than I originally thought. It turns out there's two holes, and there's stuff sticking out of the holes. It tried its best to plug it, but I'm pretty sure that's part of a connecting rod. And look how it split the block. That is wild and awesome. So the design of this engine will definitely allow you to pull the cylinder head without pulling the camshafts. But that's not really what we do here. We're going to take this apart to see where all the damage is. So now we're going to cram these bolts off so that we can pull the cams. And I mean, we could just pull the head the way it is, but that's not what we do. Well, it's already starting to remove itself a little bit. It's just a little tip. Boop. I know what you guys are saying. You ruined it. Well, did you guys see the block? So looking at the journals and the cylinder head and all the valve train, it's all really nice. I don't see any signs of oil starvation. All of the rollers feel good. There is really no cause for concern that I can see. Of course, every time I edit one of these videos, I see things I missed, but you can't pause real life, but you can pause a video. And there's a little bit of wear on the cam plate. It's really not too terrible. I think it's perfectly fine. And the camshafts also look really good. It's all really nice. It's time to crack the head bolts loose. Oh, I need to put the brakes on. That should be safer. Time to lift the head. Well, it removed the head gasket for me. Let's take a look. Super thick head gasket. It's in excellent condition. Well, that looks a little hot, doesn't it? And look how far down the bore this one is. How much stroke does this engine have?
Hello down there.
I think there's a problem with that rod. There's definitely some water and some grit in here. This thing was clearly outside in the snow and rain. You can see there's some moisture sitting. So now it is time, formally time for some science. Pass, pass, fail. Okay, so we only got one bad one. I mean, 75%. It's not terrible. Surprisingly, the cylinder head looks great. I mean, after looking at the pistons, there was no signs that it made contact with the cylinder head. So I think we're gonna have a good cylinder head here. Almost looks like it might have been breached right there, but I don't know. Maybe a little bit right there. That's a little suspicious, isn't it? I went and retrieved this thing, and I still don't really see any glaring problems with this. Not even on the other side. I think it's okay. Let's remove the oil filter and see if there's anything stuck in the pleats. Hey, I got a filter with this one. So, it looks great. I don't see any debris in here. There's no signs of metal. This looks fantastic. All right, now I'm going to roll this goo box over, see what comes out of it so we can pull the oil pan. You know what, though? The oil pan's going to have a bunch of parting gifts, so I think we're going to pull the pan the way it sits because I don't want to have to fish a bunch of engine confetti out of the inside of the engine. It is now time to start unbolting the oil pan. See what kind of gifts there are for us. All right, I think that's the last bolt. I got it in there kind of loose. Yeah, let's get it cracked loose first. There's not really anywhere to pry. I'll just give it a couple taps here. That was loud. It's starting to break the seal up here. Got all the bolts out, right? Except for the one that's only halfway out. Okay. Oh, we got some oil. All right, I'm going to go pour out the contents of this oil pan. Well, the fluid part of it, and then I'll come back with the solids. So the contents of the party platter are a lot more sparse than I had expected. However, the things that are in here are still quite concerning. There is a bolt. And from the looks of it, no one has had this oil pan off. So how is there a bolt in here? Aside from that, there's a bunch of oily stuff. We'll just get it all. Ooh, a circlip. excuse me, sir, clip. That looks like part of a piston. It's really, it's bad. But I expected more. I'm not going to say it's a letdown, because it surely isn't a letdown. So I cleaned everything up just a little bit. The bolt appears to be, it looks so, maybe it's a little stretched. It definitely has a thin spot. That's bad. And then we have a circlip, some larger, not even large, but I don't see any pasteurized bearings. There's no signs of an oiling failure. There's no sections of rod. There's literally just a circlip, a bolt, and a little bit of confetti here. And when you look in the pan, there's some smalls. Is that gold? That really looks like gold in there. That's not. It looks like brass, maybe part of a oil control ring. I don't see what's going on here. There's holes in the block. Did everything escape? All right, so I'm going to roll this thing over. And I think you guys are going to get a better idea of what's going on here. Ooh, it sounds like a cash register. The oil pan's off of it. Oh, there's a bunch of big... Oh, it's dropping parts. So, this is the oil pump and the balance shaft cassette. And it appears to now have been converted to a modular design, because it's in a whole mess of pieces. Yeah, I'm going to roll this thing over real quick. Hopefully nothing crazy hits the ground. There's a pan under it. Oh, we're dropping some important stuff. Sounds like it anyway. So this is absolute wreckage in here. I have never seen one of these broken so badly. Obviously, something hit it hard, like a connecting rod. If it did that to that, of course it would make sense. It would put holes in the block. Now, there is some stuff in the pickup tube. It's hard to see what that actually is. It's like it looks like rocks. Yeah, this is pretty rough, guys. I think we might be able to turn this engine over once we remove all of this. So I think that's what we're going to do next. I'm going to try to remove this in one piece. That bolt is slightly misshapen. Now this bolt I have some concerns about. Yeah, I don't think we need to take that one out right now. I think that one's just fine the way it is. Let's see if old Blue will help us out here. I think this part will come off pretty easily. It's already halfway there. Oh man, it's gonna literally crumble. Oh wow. Oh wow. That looks important. Wow. I don't know if this is going to come all the way apart. This is some pretty bad carnage. I did not expect that with that little bitty hole as the only part that I could see. This is bonkers. Look at these bearings are chewed up. I bet you this shaft is bent. This whole assembly is like locked up tight, and that could be why the engine didn't rotate, because this is meshed with a gear on the crankshaft. So that could easily lock the whole thing up. This thing is It's super terrible. I've never seen one of these broken so badly. But that's not the real story here. I mean, it's bad, but it's not that bad. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. That's part of it. Oh, look, there's some piston in there. And this rod it's poked clean through. It's so impressive to me. I mean, this is a low RPM engine. To do this, I just don't know. I don't understand. There's so much damage in there. I think let's try to turn should we try to turn the engine over? I don't think that's gonna fly. We're gonna try it anyway. It's gonna work, guys. It's gonna work. Oh, it does turn. It's bad, but it turns. All right, let's see what we can do here. I bet if that doesn't do that, does it? I mean, the good news is that I think I can actually get this apart like this. This part of the rod, number 3, is very unhappy. It's the most unhappy. It's locked up on there. I don't know why. If I could just get it to point a little north, let's try it like that. Maybe we can do this. Oh, yeah, look. There's nothing wrong with this engine. Oh, I think we can get the remnants of the rods and pistons out of this thing. Now I'm going to make an effort to unbolt the remaining 3 rod caps. All right, I need to turn the crank just a little to get the rods and pistons out. Just like that. And cylinder 4. All right, now I need to get this crank bolt out of here, so I'm going to use a chrome socket and look the other way. Ooh, I don't know if that's going to happen. It's like a dead weight. That's kind of fun. What if we just get the breaker bar and I just crack it loose? I don't even know if it's right-hand thread or not. I guess that should be an important detail, huh? Well, it's either left-hand thread or I just broke it. Trial by fire. I hope I don't need a puller for this. I'm going to be slightly unenthused if that's the case. Oh, no, it'll come off. Now what I should have done before I put the engine on the stand is remove this rear plate, but I'm stubborn and I don't like doing things, I mean I do kind of like doing things out of order. But I need to get that out, engine stand's in the way, so we're going to just take a couple bolts out of the engine stand, it's going to be fine, just don't look at it. See, it didn't even flinch. And then if I just... It's going to work, guys. See? It's fine. Now we can zip the main caps out. Uh-oh. I hope I don't ruin the block doing this. Let's thrust. Okay, so I think I can lift the crank, which will knock this out pretty easily. Or not. Normally I'd tell you never to do this. This engine's kind of damaged. Well, this is a sight to see for sure. The problem I have is that this is, well, it's kind of, oh, there we go. It's pretty wrecked, but I'm unsure about the wrist pin condition. I'm really unsure. Look at those nice brass bushings. I can see that the oil squirter has moved over to the other side of the engine. And there's a circlip. We're going to try to get the remnants out of this so we can take a look at them. Let's just make sure we get it all in the piston. We'll use it like a basket, carry all of the goods. We have one mutilated connecting rod bolt to get out. I don't know if we're going to be able to do this, but we do have vice grips. I'm going to go straight for the vice grips. 8 out of 7 times it has worked for us. I can no longer get a socket on there, and if I could, I don't know that I could hold it still. So we're just going to see what we can do here. I think we can do this. Whoa there. I'm stuck here. I think this bolt's a little bent. It's coming out. How long is this bolt? I think we're getting some headway here. Success? Success. Well, we have some things to see today. Let's look at the rod bearings. So, cylinder 1 has a little bit of wear. It's not terrible. Cylinder 2, a little bit of wear. Now, this was the problematic one. And the shells were on top of each other, but they're not really deformed. Like, they were not starved of oil. They're not delaminating. Cylinder 4 looks good. And then we get to the rods and pistons. Well, so this one's a little odd. I don't know if you can easily tell. So this one's straight. This one looks to be a little bent. It's just a little like that. Just a little. Let's see if we can get a better vantage point. See, that looks bent. I think that one's bent. Piston doesn't really look too bad. I looked it over pretty closely, although is that a crack? Let me get this cleaned up, see if that's cracked. It's not cracked. There's no cracks in the crown or anywhere on this piston. The piston actually looks pretty good, but I'm pretty sure that rod is just bent a little bit. This one looks pretty good. The oil rings are really gummed up on these. And then it's got an interesting stain. I don't know, I can't really tell if that's partially melted, but it looks like it had a fuel delivery issue. That does not look great. And then there was cylinder 3. Now, Volkswagen uses fractured rod technology. That's your guys' joke, not mine. I didn't come up with that. I can't take credit. They are fractured rods, and this one is extra fractured. This part was driven through the block. It's really hard to tell. Oh, wait. Could it be? What have we got here? Oh no. Do you think we can get this off? We're gonna do it. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get through the rest of this. As you can see, it was a pretty clean break. It broke the rod cap bolt here. There's the head of the bolt. And I bet you these are kind of egged out here. There's the remnants of the bottom of the piston. There's an oil squirter. And that's what's left of the piston itself. It's pretty not good. It's wrecked. And then you get to cylinder 4. Hard to tell if that one is straight, but aside from the clogged up oil control ring, this one looks pretty decent. Main bearing shells, moderate wear at worst. This one's kind of odd because it's worn on one side. It's interesting. The crankshaft, surprisingly, it has no torn up journals. The only thing that is concerning, which I'm going to throw this crank in the scrap bin because of it, is the sheer amount of gouges and impacts on this thing. This thing is probably bent. It's not a super strong crankshaft to begin with, and it's not worth a ton of money if it was mint. This is not worth salvaging. I just don't think it is. And the block is something else. Nice hole in the front. That sounds wrong. It's not what I meant to say. Maybe that's the front of the block. Yeah, that's the front. Look at that crack along there. It almost broke this whole part of the block off. It's split right here. Now, this was not sold to me as a rebuildable engine, so don't worry, guys. I didn't get screwed over. I didn't get ripped off. It actually cracked it. Let's get a light on that. It looks like it's cracked down there. There's some more chunks of goodies and stuff. That's one hell of an impact. Now, this might be the most boring part of this teardown. Some vertical scratches. This was the cylinder that let go, but since it probably broke at the very bottom of the stroke, there's not really a ton of damage to the bore. It's kind of a moot point because the block is junk anyway, but it's something worth mentioning. The bores weren't in too bad a condition. All right. Look at that. Hold on. It's literally perfect. That's amazing. There's not a ding, a scratch, a mark. This is ready to reinstall into another 2-liter TDI. The wrist pin lives again. There's another look at this exploded thing. It's just incredible. And I'll show you what I think caused it. There is one big, super big, it's not really that big, but it's a good clue, and that is at the back of the crank. That's a bearing, pilot bearing. This is from a manual. And there's the only bad thing about a manual transmission, the only bad, and I'm not trying to speak bad of manual transmissions because it's really hard to do that, is you can, if determined enough, select the wrong gear for the speed you are traveling. Was that this? I was on the fence as I tore this engine down about what actually caused this type of catastrophic failure. My first inkling was a hydrolock event, because no matter how hard you try, you can't compress a liquid. But if this thing sucked in water, which we did find some trace amounts of one of the cylinders, a little bit of rust staining, but this engine also sat outside. There would still be signs of it, considering that the piston was still in one piece in that cylinder. There would have been no way for the water to escape that cylinder completely. There would have been something left, and there wasn't. There was not signs. Every other engine that we've torn down that's been hydrolocked, there was still water in the engine, water on the top of the pistons, a rust line on the cylinder wall. There was signs. There were no signs like that on this engine, except for just a little bit, which could have been because it was sitting exhaust manifold side up. We didn't get a turbo with this engine, and we just got about a foot of snow over the last week and a half. So there are other liquids that can destroy rods and can bend rods. It could have been oil. Didn't really see signs of that either. It could also be fuel. But in a diesel, if an overfueling event happens, usually you have a meltdown situation. You would have a very melted piston. We have definitely torn down engines like that in the past. Don't think it was a fuel failure, although I don't know the condition of the fuel system of this engine. I don't think that was the root cause. I think there's a term called money shifting. I think someone was egregiously driving this vehicle, and they happened to select the wrong gear at the wrong time. It's a manual transmission, and if you try hard enough, you can place it in second when you mean to go into fourth. And if there's one thing that diesel engines really, really don't like, and that is super high RPM. And it doesn't take very long for them to come apart. They can stretch a rod, which is probably what happened here. It can snap a rod. It can cause all kinds of damage. But unlike a gasoline engine, when you overrev one of those, usually you have valve float because it's at some really high RPM and the valve springs can't maintain. In these engines, I mean, they do rev pretty high for a diesel. The valves are perpendicular to the piston. So even if they get hit, they're usually not going to bend unless something really terrible happens. Obviously, this wasn't that great, but I still don't think that it would have smashed a bunch of valves because they were open when the pistons went up. I just don't think that's what would have happened on one of these. If they're out of time, they will do that. Timing belt could have been out of time on certain engines. We've seen that in the past. I think I tore down a 3-liter Duramax that jump time, and it stamped valve reliefs in every piston. But in this case, that wasn't the case. It wasn't a timing failure. I think it broke a rod because it over-revved, and I think it had another rod that was slightly bent from over-revving. Those are really heavy rods. They're really strong. I'm really impressed with the amount of damage this engine had in it. I didn't think it was going to be that bad. I saw one little hole when I picked that engine up, one little hole at the back of it. And, modern engines, they don't need huge inspection ports. In this case, it needed several of them. Now, I hardly paid anything for this engine, so I don't really think I got hurt. There's still some sellable parts as cores, and I think I can sell the cylinder head out of this and feel good about it. And the rest of it, well, it'll get recycled. Maybe the oil pan might be good too, which is kind of shocking considering how bad this engine was. So if you'd like to buy any parts out of this engine or anything else I've torn down in the past, or out of this 40,000 mile 2005 SC430, I would love to fix it, but a certain insurance company requested a certificate of destruction, so I am going to part it out because I don't have that fight in me. You can go to importapart.com and peruse our inventory. I've been uploading our parts cards every single week. If you don't see what you're looking for, I'll leave our email in the video description. I really hope you enjoyed this week's teardown. I know last week there was no Carnage. This week, I hope I made up for it. As always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.